Welcome to John Gets Games. Today, I'll be doing a full 3-player playthrough of Via Nebula. This is a route building game where players will be trying to get resources from remote locations over to their building sites, but the issue is that those paths are clouded by fog. You can clear these paths of the fog, but the catch is that you will also be clearing that space for your opponents to also ferry their resources. So pretty much everything you do in this game is going to help out your opponents, so you're going to need to try and play the game so that it's helping out yourself more than everybody else around the table. Let's go ahead and jump into the game and see how it plays. Here's the starting setup for our 3-player game of Via Nebula. We will be playing the white character up here, and then our opponents will be black and blue. The object of the game is for each of the players to build these buildings out on the map. And we're going to do that by exploring the different spots on the map and then clearing away all this fog with these little green tiles in order to get access points to pull resources over to our construction sites to get these cities built. We have a card row up here which shows us the various buildings we can buy and the resources it takes to get them. At this point, I think I'll jump into playing the first turn. We'll be the starting player, and I'll teach the rest of the game as we go. Each player starts the game with 2 hidden contracts, which are essentially building plans that we can evaluate to put buildings down on the board, but each player is not sure what the other player has exactly in their hand. The player board shows us the 6 action options that we can take on our turn, and we get 2 actions to spend on each of our turns. All of these only cost 1 action, except for this one, which is clearing away petrified forests, and I'll show how that works in a little bit. The game revolves around trying to get these buildings out onto the board, and you can't build a building without a construction site. This action right here shows us that it takes 1 action to put one of these construction site tokens out on the board, so let's go ahead and start our turn by doing that. This building site token can be put in any ruined spot on the board which look like this, and up to 2 players can be in each of these spots. So I think it makes sense for us to go down here, and the reason for that is we're really close to these bricks that started on the board, and we're also quite close to the pig spot over here that has yet to be exploited, and this wheat spot down here, but the proximity means we could potentially get to them relatively quickly. And it seems like a pretty good plan because here is this building called the store, and it's going to cost 1 brick, 1 pig, and 1 wheat. So we're kind of angling to be the first person to build this store. Has a nice special ability on the bottom, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and it's also worth 3 points if we are the person who's able to actually build this building. For our second action, I think we should activate and place one of our 2 craftsmen out onto the board. We could place this craftsman down onto any of the exploitation tiles that are on the board, and I think we want to go onto this spot right here with the pigs. It's one of the ones that's close to this building site, and what this allows us to do is place pigs on the board equal to, well, the right amount depending on the player count. If it was a 4-player game, we would put 4 down, but as you can see in the 2 and 3-player games, we're going to put 3 pigs down into the spot, and we as the white player, we get to keep this token. It's going to be worth 2 points at the end of the game, no matter what for us. And that finishes our second action, and we're done with our first turn, and now it's on to black. For black's first action, they are also going to start a building site on the same location we were at. And for their second action, they're going to do the clear fog action. In order to do this, you take one of these green tiles off of their player board, and they can now place this fog cleared space anywhere on the board as long as it's adjacent to an empty meadow or adjacent to one of their pieces. In this case, the building site works, and it's good to know that this is the same as the opposite way. Both of these building sites occupy the entire hex. It's also worth noting that each of these stacks is 4 hexes tall, so they just pulled the first one off, so there's only 3 left here, and once a player clears the first 3, they're going to get 2 victory points at the end of the game, so that's a bit of an incentive to be a person who actively clears the board. The blue player decides to spend their first action setting up this building site here, and with their second action, they are going to clear away this fog. So it's back to us, and I think that we should probably spend both of our actions transporting resources to our building site. You see, that can take 1 action. We know that we want to get 1 pig and 1 brick over to our building site, and the way this works is as long as you can trace a path of clear meadow tiles all the way from the resources to the building site, you're fine. So for 1 action, I can take this pig and transport it over here and drop it off on my side, and then for my second action, I can take this brick, transport it over that section, and now I have both of these on there. I am just 1 resource away from actually being able to build that building. Unfortunately, that resource is this wheat down here, which nobody has actually exploited yet, so we can actually pull it off the board. For the black player's first action, they're going to set up a new building site over here where the blue player already is. And for their second action, they're going to take 1 pig from this spot and transport it over to this building. For the blue player's first action, they're going to go ahead and place a craftsman on this spot here, and that is going to end up generating them 2 wheat because it's a 3-player game. And for their second action, they were going to grab this pig over here, and they're going to transport it over to their building site. The moment you take all of the resources off a spot with a craftsman, you actually get to take the craftsman off the board and put it back on the player sheet so they can be used elsewhere on the board. It's our turn again, and it doesn't look like anybody else is going after this exploitation tile, and I guess we just need to do the dirty work ourselves, so we'll go ahead and put our craftsman down. I mean, we do get 2 more victory points for it, but the concern, since we're putting 3 wheat down here, is that potentially, if not all 3 of these wheat are taken, then this craftsman could be stuck there on the board for a while, but we'll see how this plays out. And for our second action, I think let's go ahead and set up another building site, and let's join in the fun over here. There's quite a bit going on over here, with resources being opened up, and resources that are pretty close by that we can go after. So yeah, let's kind of tag along where they are, and maybe we can clear fog so that we can make these paths work in our favor and get a building done here as well. It's now the black player's turn, and they're going to spend their first action clearing fog away right there, and for their second action, they're actually going to pick up one of these stones and they're going to transport it down this path of clear fog spots all the way over to this building site here. For the blue player's first action, they're going to pick up this stone and transport it along this clear meadow path to their building site here. For their second action, they are going to build the first building of the game, which comes from this top row. You'll see it costs a stone and a pig, and they have exactly that, so they are going to spend this to the bank and take this card, which is going to be worth 2 points to them. They're going to grab one of their 5 buildings from their player board, and then they're going to go ahead and replace their building site with the constructed building. This building site tile comes back to their player board so they can deploy it again if they want to. Lastly, almost all of the buildings have a special ability that happen on the bottom. We see that this one says you can open up a neutral exploitation without receiving the token. And well, they don't have a great spot for themselves, so they're just going to go ahead and open up this pig over here. It's going to put 3 on the board, and this token just goes away. And you'll also notice that they did not put a craftsman down for evaluating that specific building's action. And the last thing we need to do before it's our turn is reveal the next building. We see this is a distillery. It costs a wood and a pig, and when you build it, it gives you another action on the turn that you built that building. It's our turn again. I think it's going to be a pretty simple turn. You may have noticed that there are these fog spaces, and then there are these fog spaces with trees in them. These are petrified forests, and it actually costs you 2 actions in order to clear the fog from one of these spots. But I think it still makes sense for us to spend our whole turn doing that, clearing this spot here, because now our building site here is connected to this stone and these bricks, and it could also end up being connected to many more things because this is kind of a developing highway for transporting goods. For the black player's first action, they're going to grab one of these bricks and they're going to transport it over to this building site right here. And for their second action, they're going to reveal one of their hidden contracts, and they're going to actually build this building. You'll notice it costs a stone, a pig, and a brick, and that is exactly what they have here. So they're going to go ahead and ditch all of these resources. Then they pull their building site off and place their really cool looking building onto the board. And finally, we evaluate the bottom. We see it says express delivery. They can place a resource from the reserve onto one of their building sites. They currently only have one building site, so they're going to go ahead and put a pig right down on there, which is great for them considering there are no pigs particularly close to this spot at this point in the game. They then tuck this under their player board, and it'll be worth 2 points to them at the end of the game. For the blue player's first action, they're going to set up a new building site right here. They're really happy we cleared that out for them. I don't think we're doing too well at this point. I think both of our opponents are doing a little better. They obviously both have buildings down already, and we're a bit stalled out on that so far. And for their second action, they're going to transport this stone all the way over to their building site. It's our turn once again, and despite the fact that we set up this craftsman, we still have not done anything to pull those wheats over to our area. We haven't even cleared this fog. And I don't think we should do that this turn either, because there is some low-hanging fruit that we should probably jump on right now. The first is this single stone over here. We probably want to pick that up and transport it to our building site because it's the last one, and it'll be a little bit until another one clears up. There's this over here, but we'd have to clear the fog over there, and this would need to be exploited by somebody. And the second thing is, I think we should grab one of these bricks and transport that over this path as well, kind of make use of this petrified forest clearing that we did last turn, because these bricks might run out pretty soon as well. And now we have a brick and a stone on this spot, which gives us a few options. One of them in particular is this secret plan, which is one of the secret hidden cards. And we only need 1 wood in order to make that spot happen for this. It's worth 3 points, which is great. And we get to draw the top card from the building deck and put that into our hidden hand as well. So a little bit of secret information to keep building towards buildings that our opponents can't necessarily see that we are working towards. The black player decides to do something quite similar. They're going to pick up this wheat and transport it around to this building site here. And then they're going to grab this last brick and transport it according to this clear path to this building site. They now have 3 things on that spot, and that finishes their turn. These resources are starting to look pretty scarce, so the blue player decides they want to grab this wheat while it's still there. They're going to transport it back to this building site here, and with their second action, they're going to set up a new building site right over there. It's our turn again, and like I said last time, we want to try and build this secret plan on this spot here, so we're going to need access to wood. So I think let's go ahead and clear the fog in this spot right here. It is adjacent to a couple other players. We're potentially helping them out, but getting the fog down is also a good thing. I think before we do grab the wood from the spot, however, we should probably take this opportunity to use our third building site and put it down over here. The reason for that is because Blue has already indicated they want to do stuff over here, and if they are going to be doing stuff like maybe clearing fog, then we can potentially piggyback on them and try to get some resources as well. This kind of stops the black player from being able to squeeze in there on their turn. I think it sets us up pretty well. We definitely need to actually build some of these buildings though. For the black player's first action, they're going to go ahead and build their second hidden contract from their hand. We see it costs a wheat, a pig, and a brick, and that's exactly what they have here. So they're going to go ahead and take this token off of the board and then place their second building down onto that spot. If we look at the bottom of the card, we see it says shortcut, remove 2 of the leftmost meadow tiles from your guild board. So the black player is going to go ahead and tuck this underneath their board here, and they're going to take these 2 tiles and just remove them. And you'll notice that this now clears up their first explorer, which just means they're going to get an extra 2 points at the end of the game for getting all the tiles off of that spot. It's worth noting that the victory points under the next tiles are all 2 points, so it's not like it scales up as players are getting these green meadow tiles down. For Black's second action, they're going to set up a new building site up at this top spot on the board, and I just realized that the blue player forgot to take this craftsman off the board once the last wheat was taken from that spot. For the blue player's first action, they're going to grab one of these woods and they're going to transport it over this meadow that we so kindly cleared for them. They're going to put it on this building site, and for the second action, they're going to place this craftsman down in this spot over here. It's going to give them 2 points for this tile, and they're going to put 3 bricks down into that spot. I think it's finally time to hatch this secret plan, so let's spend our first action by taking this wood and transporting it over to this building site, and finally, we are going to spend our second action building our first building of the game, so we're going to ditch all 3 of these resources because they match the ones on this card. We're going to get this building site back, and we get to place this really cool looking building right down there on the board. And for the last part of this building action, let's go ahead and evaluate the secret plan, which lets us draw the top card of this deck and add it into our hand, and it looks like we got a workshop. This is going to allow us to place one of our meadow tiles from our board onto a petrified forest. So that's pretty great, and it's not too expensive to place, and it's also 3 points, so this goes into our hand, and we'll maybe try to build this thing. The black players decided they just want to clear out some fog. They're going to put one over here, clearing out that meadow, and then another one way down here, and you'll notice that that is a very long connection. It seems like this is pretty remote, but once it's connected to this highway of meadows, it can actually reach pretty far around the board. It's now Blue's turn to place their second building. We'll notice that this costs a wood, a stone, and a wheat, and that is exactly what they have on this building site here. So they're going to go ahead and get rid of this site, kind of nestle this building. It's pretty popular in this area of the board. We've seen this one before. It's the shortcut. It allows the player to remove 2 of the leftmost meadow tiles from their guild board. So they're going to remove 2 of these. There's only 1 remaining in that first stack for them. And then this gets slid underneath the board. And I think it's worth noting that each player has this part of their board, which is where you would put resources down that were excess of what we needed to build the building. So as you're playing the game, you might end up taking too many things onto a building site, and when you build a building, if you have any excess, you put them in here and they're worth -1 points at the end of the game. But so far, nobody has done that quite yet. I'm not sure if anyone will. It's our turn again, and when we look out at the board, we realize there are currently no stone spots out on the board, and in fact, there's only 1 exploitation spot, this one right here, that's convenient to be able to get stone onto a highway to get some of these buildings supplied with stone. So I think we should probably take this opportunity to go ahead and place our craftsman down. It's actually our second one because this guy is still over here with all of his wheat. We'll put this down here, and we'll get 2 points, because 2 points is pretty real. If you'll notice these buildings we've been building, they're like 2 or 3 victory points in general, so grabbing 2 just for placing this down is pretty great. And then of course it's a 3-player game, so we'll put 3 stone down onto that spot, and hopefully us, including other people, will start to take the stone from that spot, free up the craftsman so we can do more of these moves. And I think we've put it off long enough. Let's go ahead and put a fog clearing down here so that we have a chance of just getting some of these wheat over to this construction area to maybe try to empty this out, although at this point, I'm not sure if people will care, but we are 1 fog area now away from getting this wheat into the kind of meadow superhighway to supply lots of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if all these get taken up at some point, but those are our 2 actions. It's now the black player's turn. For the first action, they decide to put this clearing down there, and for the second action, they're going to take one of these pigs, and they're going to travel it along this meadow all the way over here to their building site at the top of the board. Now it's over to the blue player who thinks that was a really good idea, so they're going to go ahead and copy it exactly. They're going to go ahead and place this meadow down, which is actually the 4th for the blue player, so they've just unlocked their first explorer, and they have 2 points at the end of the game because of that. And then they're going to grab one of these pigs, and they're going to travel it down over here to get onto their building site over there. It's our turn again, and I think that we can do something a little cheeky. Let's go ahead and grab one of these pigs and travel it all the way down here to our building site. But now let's go ahead and take the other one. People are doing a run on these pigs, so getting these is pretty good. So we're going to travel it over here. Now this might seem like a bad idea because in general we have not seen any buildings that require two of the same resource. However, if you remember, we're trying to build this store down here, and the ability when we get to evaluate this store is we get to change one resource on one of our building sites for one of our choice. So we are setting ourselves up to essentially make that pig wild for us when we inevitably build this store, hopefully on our next turn when we finally get that wheat over to this building site. For the black player's first action, they're going to go ahead and clear this fog over there. This is actually their 8th meadow piece down, so they've now unlocked 2 explorers for 4 victory points at the end of the game. And for their second action, they're going to send out their first craftsman of the game. He's going to go ahead and exploit this spot for 3 bricks, and they'll get the 2 points at the end of the game for this tile. For the blue player's first action, they've decided to set up a building site on this spot over here with black. And for their second action, they're going to pick up one of these bricks that was just freed up, and they're going to put it over, transported to that building site. Alright, it's our turn, and I think it's finally time to build this store that we've been eyeing all game long. So for our first action, we're going to take one of these wheats and transport it over to our building site. And for our second action, we are going to build this site. It was on one of the 4 open buildings at the top of the board. So we're going to go ahead and clear these 3 slots here. We can also ditch this building site back to our board. We get to place this lovely white castle thing down there. And then we're going to evaluate the bottom of the store. This is going to let us swap one resource of our choice with one from the general reserve. I think we're going to take this pig off right here, and we're going to replace it with this piece of wood. And the reason for that is that I'm eyeing this merchant building because you can see it costs one of everything except wheat, and now we have a pig and a wood on that building, and it just needs a stone and a brick in order to finish, and those are relatively close to us. And the nice thing about this building is that it's worth 1 point at the end of the game for each of these exploitation tiles that we've taken, and we've already have 3 of them, so it'd be relatively easy to take more of those tiles in the future, which gets us points anyway, and then it'll also amp up the points we get for this particular card. And lastly, we have to refill this spot with a new building. We see this is a buy air building. It costs 1 of everything except pigs, and the ability down here lets you actually pick up a meadow tile from the board and place it onto any fog space. So that can definitely mess with some of the supply chains that people have been building out on the board. It's now the black player's turn, and they've decided they want to place both of their building sites for their 2 actions, and they're actually going to put both of them down on the same spot. You are allowed to have your building site where another one already is. The reason they're doing that is because they can see that this spot right here is connected very well to a bunch of resources throughout the board, so they just want to get a jump on it, use their whole turn grabbing the spot, so that unfortunately we and blue cannot get in on that. For the blue player's first action, they're going to clear this fog right there, and for their second action, they're going to transport one of these wheats all the way along this meadow path to their building site over here at the top of the board. It's once again our turn, and right now we only have this one building site out on the board. We have the pig and the wood, which we just got last turn, and we actually have 3 really good options. 2 of these are from the main board over here, and 1 of these comes from our hand. The first is the distillery. We could already build this right now. We have the wood and the pig. It gives 2 victory points, which is not a ton, but it is also only 2 resources. Plus, it'll give us a bonus action to evaluate right on this turn, which is pretty great. We get 3 actions on this turn. The second thing is its merchant, which we already talked about. It's kind of the reason I said we wanted to get that piece of wood was to try and work towards this, because right now this is worth 3 points, but it could be worth more as we grab more of these exploitation tokens. And then the final option for us is this quiet town, which is a hidden contract for us. It's a bit boring. It doesn't have any effect on the bottom, but we are just 1 wheat away from building it, and it's worth 4 victory points, just twice as much as this distillery. So it's definitely 3 good options to consider when what we're trying to go towards. And you know what? I think 4 points is just too much to say no to. In addition to the fact that right now both of our craftsmen are out on the board, so we don't even have a good way to get more exploitation tiles to make that merchant better, but by doing this we're going to free up one of these. So I think this is probably our best move. So for our first action, we're going to grab this wheat down here, we're going to transport it thanks to the blue player for clearing this fog. It's going to get transported all the way over here to our building site, and then for our second action we're going to cash in this quiet town. All these resources are going to go away. We get to place our third building on the board, and that's 4 victory points in the bank. And of course, lastly, we get our craftsman back to our board. For the black player's first action, they're going to clear the fog right there, and for their second action, they're going to grab one of these wood pieces right here and transport it over to their building site. For the blue player's first action, they're going to place a new building site onto this ruins over here, and for their second action, they notice that there are currently no wheat resources out on the board, so they're going to go over here and exploit this spot to pull 2 wheat down onto the board, and then they grab this token. It now comes back to us, and even though we're the only player with 3 buildings built on the table, we also are the only player with no building sites out. So I think we should spend our first action putting this down, and I think it makes the most sense to piggyback over with blue over here because there's only 1 spot to clear out before we can kind of connect to this big web of cleared meadows. So I think we should go ahead and take that spot. And for our second action, we are going to clear another piece of fog, which is our fourth one, so we finally get to unlock the 2 points for this Explorer right here. As far as where we place this meadow down on the board, I think we should put it over here. And the reason for that is we can see this workshop that's in our hand, it's kind of hidden. It's going to take a stone, and we already exploited this tile to get some stone, and nobody has actually been making this clear to go get there. And you might be saying, well, we can't do anything with this spot not clear yet, but I'm kind of putting the onus on the blue player to have them spend an action to actually clear this spot so that we can make use of this path here. Maybe they won't on their turn, we'll just have to go ahead and see. For the black player's first action, they've decided they're going to go ahead and build this distillery. So that's going to cost them the wood and the pig. They get to plunk their big old building down on the board. We refill the building row. Looks like we have an architect. This person gets 1 point for every contract that's been fulfilled throughout the game. And then finally, the black player gets to evaluate the distillery, which is going to give them an extra action, so they still have 2 actions to do on this turn. So they decide to clear this fog for their second action, and for their third action, they're going to take one of these wheats, they're going to run it all the way over here to one of their 2 building sites. The blue player has looked around the board and they've realized something. This wheat over here is probably the last easy to grab wheat that we're going to see for this entire game. There's only one more tile for wheat. It's up here and there will be 3 sprouted on it, but in order to get access to it, all 2 of these wood will have to first get exploited, first have a club path to it, have them all go away, and then we can finally get access to this one, because this spot here, I haven't actually mentioned it, but all these kind of colorful, scary looking spots on the board, they're impassable terrain. So they're going to go ahead and place this down here for their first action, and they're going to grab this wheat while the getting's good. It's going to go all the way along this path to this building site, not that one, and that will end their turn. They're going to get this craftsman back. It's now back to us, and I want to explain some of my thoughts for where we're at right now. We have 1 building site out, but 2 more buildings to actually build, so we are going to have to put 1 more building site down on the board if we want a chance of getting all of our buildings built. And right now, probably the best spot on the board to do that is this ruins down here. It's only 1 spot away from getting into this super highway meadow area, but it has a petrified forest location on it. But we pulled this workshop into our hand with that secret plan card, and if you look at the bottom, you'll see that it says you can place one of your meadow tiles onto a petrified forest. So I'm thinking we might want to try to get this built, and we don't mind so much that the wheat has been depleted from the board at this point, because this doesn't even need wheat. Maybe by the time we do need wheat, we'll be able to get access to that a little bit easier, or maybe we could just hopefully not use wheat for the rest of the game. So all that being said, right now there is 1 easy to access wood. It's right over here. We will have to clear this spot of fog in order to get it over to our building site, but beyond that, we would need to exploit some wood and get some fog cleared in order to get to it. Like this one, it's a couple regular fog or 1 petrified forest fog away from getting into the highway, and same goes with this one. So let's go ahead and spend our turn putting this fog down here for our first action, and then picking up this wood and running it all the way over here for our second. It's now the black player's turn, and it looks like we inadvertently helped them out a lot. By removing this wood, we've now cleared this meadow to be able to transport goods down it. So the black player, they're going to spend both their actions just taking this 1 brick, transporting it over here to this building site, and then they're going to grab the other brick here and do the same exact thing. So I think that ended up helping the black player out more than it helped us. It's a bit of a bummer. The blue player has decided to follow suit. They are going to pick up this stone here, transport it over to this building site, and they're going to take this stone and transport it over here to this other building site of theirs. So it's our turn, and once again, we're trying to build this workshop, which is going to be a wood, a stone, and a brick. And right now, we just have the 1 wood over here. So looking out here, we see there's a stone over here, which we could grab for one of our actions. But then we also need brick. And if we look at the board, we see there's also this stone tile down here, which is connected to this kind of super highway. I think what probably makes more sense for us to do is go ahead and send a craftsman over here and exploit this spot for our first action. That'll put 2 bricks down on the board, and for our second action, we're going to take one of these bricks, transport it over to our building site, and that way, hypothetically, next turn, it should be pretty easy to get a stone. We either grab this one, or we spend our first action exploiting this, and our second one getting the stone over there. I think we're more likely to be safe doing this than the other way. If we did the stone right now, and maybe just exploited this, then between now and our next turn, both these bricks could go away, and then it would be a little bit harder to get access to bricks to make this happen. For the black player's first action, they're going to grab this stone, they're going to transport it over here to this right-hand building site. And for the second action, they're going to grab this craftsman, and they're going to go all the way down here and exploit this wood spot that's going to put 3 wood onto the board and give the black player 2 points. And of course, this white craftsman gets returned to us, and now it is the blue player's turn. They've decided they're going to grab this brick, and it's going to travel along this highway over here to this building site, which frees up this other white craftsman, goes onto our board. And for blue's second action, they're going to go ahead and build this secret plan over in this spot because they have the brick, the wheat, and the stone in order to do this. This is Blue's third building out onto the board, and if you look at the actual card, we've seen this before. This is the one that allows a blue player to draw a card from the top of the deck and keep it hidden into their hand, and then of course they get 3 points for this card. It's now back to us, and I can't help but feel like we are playing from behind here. All players have 3 buildings out on the board, but both of our opponents have all the building sites they need down, and not only that, but their building sites have resources on them. This blue building site has 2, this blue building site has 2, and this black one has 3, and that one has 1. Whereas we have 1 building site with 2 resources, and we haven't even placed our 5th building site yet. So, well, we're going to do the best we can, but it definitely feels like maybe we're being a little bit too nice to our opponents, and they're kind of getting away with using all the different routes that we are building. So let's go ahead and do the plan we talked about last turn. We're going to exploit this tile, and that is one nice thing. Every time we do this thing to unlock resources, we are getting points for ourselves. So this is going to put 2 rock down onto the board. And then for our second action, we're just going to pick up one of these rocks, transport it over here, put it under the building site so that on the next turn we'll be able to build that workshop. For the black player's first action, they're going to go ahead and clear the fog down here, and for the second action, they're going to grab this wood, and they're going to travel it all the way over here to this one building site. It's got a huge pile of resources on it. For the blue player's first action, they're going to grab this stone, which frees up this craftsman for us to go back onto our board, and it's going to travel all the way over here along the board to this building site over here. And for their second action, they've decided to exploit this pig tile way over here on the right side of the board. That's going to put 2 pigs down and give them 1 point. It's once again our turn, and we could build this workshop now. We've been building towards it. We have the right resources. However, if we look around at the board, we see that the black player has this big pile of resources here, and there is this card that is in the building tableau, and it's the only one that matches the resources that the black player has, and we can see the black player has no hand of hidden building cards. And we see the ability of this says that you can pick any meadow tile from the main board and put it onto any fog space. So what that means is if they're going to do this on their next turn, which is, it probably will, they could easily just remove the meadow spot that we spent all that time placing on this petrified forest with the workshop. So I think what we actually want to do is stall out. We don't have to play this yet because it's hidden in our hand, so that's pretty good. Instead, I think we should put this building site down here and then spend one of our craftsmen exploiting this brick spot because we're really close to it. There are not too many convenient bricks right now on the board, and this would just be one fog clearing spot to get access to this, and it's going to get us a victory point. So we're going to go ahead and put 2 bricks down. As we expected, the black player has decided they want to build this by air, so they spend all of these resources in order to take the card and remove that building site. They get to put their building down on the board, and we'll reveal another one from the top. This one is a Lazy Explorer. It scores 1 point for each of the unrevealed explorers at the end of the game, so you actually get points for not putting meadows down onto the board if you buy this tile. And interestingly enough, it just costs 2 resources that are the same. And now they evaluate the ability on the bottom that lets them move a meadow tile around the board, and they figure that blue is probably the bigger threat than we are because, well, I mean, this site's pretty well built up, but this one's empty, and blue has 2 well-stocked sites already, so they're going to actually take this tile away, kind of isolating blue and making them spend more actions. They're going to move this over here and plunk it down there to connect this up. They now have 1 additional action they can spend, so they're going to grab one of these pigs over here, and it's going to travel all the way over here to black's final building site. Play now goes over to the blue player who looks a little bit annoyed, and they're going to spend their first action grabbing this pig and traveling it along this meadow path all the way to this building site here, which is going to clear the spot and get them their craftsman back. And that's pretty good for them too. They had both of them out on the board, so they now have the option to deploy this out on the board again. And with all these resources, they are going to build the architect. That is a stone, a wheat, a pig, and a brick. So all this stuff goes away, and blue is able to get their 4th building down onto the board. And when you look at the bottom of the card, you'll see that it doesn't give you any effects right now, but it's going to score 1 point for each contracted completed at the end of the game. And right now, blue has 4, so it's worth 4 points. And if they can get that 5th building down, it'll make this one worth 5 points. And of course, we have to reveal another building to the row. It's another distillery, which gives you an extra action when it gets built. It's now our turn, and it's finally time to build this workshop we've been talking about forever. So we are going to spend the resources associated with it. We're going to go ahead and remove this building site and put this beautiful building down. We now only have 1 more to build. And let's go ahead and stick to the plan on the bottom of the workshop. It lets us put one of the meadow tiles from our board onto a petrified forest. So we'll plunk it down right there, and it's going to connect our building site to most of the rest of the board. For the black player's first action, they're going to take one of these wood down here. They're going to transport it all the way up here to their building site. And for their second action, they're going to take one of their craftsmen, and they're going to exploit this stone tile over here. It's going to get them a point, and it's going to put 2 stone down onto the board. The blue players decided they're going to spend both their actions putting down metal tiles, which is going to reveal another 2-point explorer on their board. And instead of reconnecting this building site to the rest of the board, they're going to build one here and then one right there. It's our turn again, and we are really in a bit of trouble. The issue is that all of these buildings out here require either pigs or wheat, or, well, this one right here is two of the same kind, but we just saw the turn that blue did, making a path out to those pigs, so we're pretty sure that they're going to go ahead and buy this, and we cannot get there. We can't get two of a kind before the blue player can, which means we aren't in a good position to buy any of these buildings before the game potentially ending, and it really looks like black is going to be ending this game pretty soon. And as soon as they build their fifth building, we're going to get one more turn. But I think we just need to hedge our bets a bit and hope that a building that comes out from the top of the stack is something that we can jump on once the blue and black players potentially build those buildings and reveal some new ones. So let's spend our first action taking this meadow off and putting it on the board, because at least that gets us 2 victory points. And I figure we may as well connect ourselves to this brick supply we just made, and we also may as well spend our second action to grab this brick and put it over here, because it seemed like all those buildings up at the top need a brick. It's a pretty common resource to need when building buildings. For the black player's first action, they're going to take this meadow off, which reveals their third explorer, so they're getting 6 points for that at this point at the end of the game. And they're going to plunk it down right here and spend their second action taking one of these stone and transporting it over down here to their building site, so they now have 4 resources on it. It's now the blue player's turn, and as we expected, they're going to grab one of these pigs, transport it to this building site, and then they are going to complete this lazy explorer. It requires 2 of the same type of resource. Now, of course, they are overpaying, so there is a stone on this spot. They put their 5th building down onto the board, and they have to take this stone, which they did not use in the construction of this building, and put it down here, so it's going to be minus 1 point to them at the end of the game. But blue's okay with that. They get this card here, and since they are the first player to put all 5 of their buildings down, they get this end of game card. If you see on the bottom, it is going to give them 2 points, and then all opponents can play 1 additional turn. So here it is, our final turn of the game, and let's see if by some miracle we can actually build this building, and nope, that is super not going to happen. It needs both a pig and a wheat, which are both pretty rare, so that's unfortunate for us. So let's try to make the best of a bad situation. We're going to exploit this tile here because it will give us 2 victory points at the end of the game. It's going to put 3 stone down on the board, which is really inconsequential. And unfortunately for our last action, well, we can't exploit something else because this craftsman is trapped over here. There's really nothing we can really do. If we look over at our meadow, we need to clear 4 of them before we get 2 more points for the explorers. So we'll go ahead and just, I don't know, spend this brick, transport it over here because that looks pretty, get this craftsman back, and that's going to be the end of our final turn of the game. The black player seems okay with this being their last turn. They're going to spend all 4 of these resources in order to build this merchant. And if you look at the bottom, it has points equal to the number of the exploitation tiles they've taken at the end of the game. They put their 5th building down onto the board, and their final turn is inconsequential because they also have 4 of these meadows to get through until they get more points, so they'll go ahead and plug it down there. May as well do something. At this point, the game is over, so let's count out the points and see who won. In order to figure out the final score for a player, we need to add up all the explorers that were revealed. We add to that all the cards that were played. We also add the exploitation tiles, and finally, we reduce 1 point for each of the resources in this spot on the player board. When we add all that up for us, we end the game with 28 points. The black player has 1 endgame card, which they picked up right at the end. It's the merchant, and it's worth 1 point for every exploitation tile they have. They have 3 of them, so this card is worth 3 points. And when we total up black's score, they only have 25 points, less than us. I'm a little surprised by that, but I also didn't realize we had so many exploitation tiles. Now, the blue player has 2 of these question mark cards. This first one is a lazy explorer. It's worth 1 point for each not exposed explorer, so there are 2 of those for the blue player, so this card's worth 2 points. And then this is the architect. It's worth 1 point for every completed contract, and they have 5 of them here. And lastly, I showed it before, but they're going to get 2 points for being the player who started the end of the game. And when we add all this together and then subtract the 1 for the stone over here, the blue player also ends the game with 25 points. So I'm honestly a little bit surprised, but we were able to win the game with 28 to 25 of both of our opponents. I guess it really does pay to help your opponents out by exploiting a bunch of stuff that they can then use to build buildings. Well, I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. I liked how close all the points were at the end of the game, and I really liked that the player who won did not actually have all 4 buildings down, because it makes it feel like a little bit less of a race to put buildings down and more of a Euro game where you could do a variety of things that all kind of do stuff for you. The player who won had, I think, more victory points on average for their 4 buildings as opposed to the 5 the other 2 players had, but they also just had so many more points off of those exploitation tiles because they were aiding their opponents and themselves by tapping into those resources and putting them on the board so that everybody could access them. But getting 1 or 2 points could definitely add up, especially when you get a whole bunch of them. And another thing which the white player was not able to do, but would have been great, is to synergize along with some of the buildings that have question marks, that have a variable amount of victory points at the end of the game. In particular, that one that gave you a point for every exploitation tile, that would have been 7 points at the end of the game for the white player. But they just were not able to make that specific building work because you just can't always do everything you want to do in the game. Also, I thought it was interesting the relative amount of scarcity of resources and the ease at which you went to go grab those resources. Well, the scarcity got really bad near the end. Like in the beginning of the game, there's just resources everywhere, but you still had to work pretty hard to get those out onto your building. You had to clear the fog, you had to exploit some tiles. That's going to be helping everybody. And near the end of the game, it seemed like it was just as hard to get resources onto your building sites, even though we had this massive, expansive network where you could pick up a resource from one edge of the board and zap it all the way over to the other edge of the board for one action. I guess we were just depleting those resources at the same rate we were expanding, so it kind of had a similar vibe. But yeah, at the end of the game, resource scarcity, specifically with one of those resources, really started to limit the number of options. Like it was just really, really hard to build some of those last buildings if it's just there's only one spot left on the board and it's kind of tucked away in the corner, or what if that spot had been completely depleted based off of how the cards came out. So that'll be interesting to see how that evolves through more plays of the game. But I think that pretty much wraps up this play of the game. I'd like to thank everyone who's been supporting this channel through Patreon, including the producer level pledges. If you too would like to support this channel and everything I do, you can do so at patreon.com/JohnGetsGames. Also, if you'd like to see more full game playthroughs like this one, as well as in-depth board game reviews and vlogs, you can do so by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.